Hey everyone, thank you for joining. So let's give the rest like 2 minutes to join, and then we can get started. And while we wait for them, if you've been doing something, you've been trying something and getting an error, please let us know in the chat. Then we can look at it while we wait for the others to join. Okay, seems there's no question, and I think we can start. So last time we left, we had a file, we had functions, we had a function that we could call, and we could pass it an age as an argument. So today we're going to look at something called modules. A module is simply a Python file um, with a collection of instructions. So for example, in this file we have in the functions.py file, we have a function called check age eligibility. And when we're in the, when you look at, if I look at my directory, I have a file, that file there. So what I can do is I can open the Python shell, and then I can say import functions, right? So I'm importing that this module in the sense that I'm just importing the instructions in this file. So I'm importing the file. So what I've done is I've brought in that check age eligibility. So I can say functions dot check age eligibility. Then I can pass it, since it's passing, we pass an argument like that. Then when I hit enter, it will execute that function for me. So there, what we have done is I have imported, I imported that module functions, and then from there I did functions dot check age eligibility. Now, we can do it this way, or we can say, I can say, so when I say import functions, it imports the whole module with everything in it. But I can import specific things that I want from that module. So I can say from functions, import check. I can just copy this so that I don't miss the spellings. Copy that and paste. So I can import it like that, right? Then I can just simply say check edge eligibility and then pass it on edge. Like that. So that's how we can use this module. That's one way. And then the other way is I can exit there. So the other way is I can create another file, right? So I can create another file. So let's say, for example, I create new file, then I call it modules test.py, like that. Now I can import the check eligibility function, the function from the functions.py, the functions module. So I can say from functions, sorry, spelling the functions, from functions, import check eligibility. And then I can use it in here. So then I can say check edge eligibility, then I can pass it to the edge. And then when I run it like this, it executes for me and tells me you should have an identity card. So that's how modules work. And remember, if they're in the same folder, you can import them like this. But otherwise, you have to be careful in terms of where. If for example, this functions.py was maybe one folder above it, I'll use a dot to show one folder. If it's two folders above it, I choose two dots like that. If it's three folders, I do like that. So it says from three folders from this current position, go look for the functions module, then import that. But since it's the same file, I just do that. Now, that is how you can call a module that you have defined yourself. But then Python has inbuilt modules, or what it's called the standard library. The standard library is in any programming language is what are the modules, the libraries that are within the language by default, right? So they come with the language, so you don't have to write them. So for example, there's one called random, right? So this is a module that allows you to do some, for example, random stuff. So for example, I have a list of, let's say I have a list of names, right? I want to award these names, right? Right, so I want to award this name. So I can say print, I want a random name for this. So I can say random dot choice. So I call that choice method, and then I pass that list of names. So it will print for me a random name from this list, right? So when I save that, so I can just comment this up session. And then when I run this, it will the first name it is taken is Viola. When I do that, take Viola again, Brighton, Viola, Viola, Brighton, Mary, Brighton, Mary, Brighton, Brighton. So it's, how random is this? Weird pattern, but it's supposed to be, this is supposed to be random. So I don't understand why it's not picking the other ones. Yeah, probably it's a small set of data. Yeah, so that's how you use that kind of a module. So this is a module within the language itself. So the other module is, for example, it's math. There are so many. You don't have to master all these. They're in the documentation. So for example, you can get the value of pi, right? So you can run that to print you the value of pi, 3.14, something like that. So you can get the value cosine, right? You can get the cosine of the pi. So when you run that, it will give you -1, right? So but then you need to always remember when you say import math, it imports the whole library, but you can import specific things. So I say from math, import pi and import cosine. So now instead of saying math dot, I can just say cosine, and I say the pi. So when I run that, it should give me the same value, right? The other one, for example, is the OS. OS is an operating system module. So it gives you, it allows you to work with the operating system. So for example, I can say print, I want to get the current working directory, the directory in which this file is in. So I can say os.get cwd, like that. So it will give me the current working directory. So when I run that, it shows me I'm in this folder, users/0/dev PyClass. So PyClass is the name of the folder. So that's how you use the inbuilt libraries. There's so many, and for example, in the math module, there's so many. So I can check. There's a function called dir in Python that can list all the modules in. So first I have to import. So import math. It can give you dir can give you all the methods that are on functions are within that. So for example, in the math, we have the log, we have the sine, we have the square root, we have the tangent, the tan, we have the pi, fsum, dist, degrees, right? The truncate, I think, I assume, the radians, reminder, log 10, log 2. So there are so many within. So for example, I can import OS, then I can list what is in the OS. So there are all these things in the operating system. You can read, you can write. There's so many. Those. Do we have a question? Anyone with a question? Awesome. So no question. Okay, so I'm going to create, let's create a new file called classes. .py. So in programming, there's this concept called object-oriented programming. That's usually oriented around objects. So we're going to look at how we can do that. So an object is usually an object or a class is usually an object that an object that can have a number of characteristics like properties that are the same. It can have some number of methods that can be applied to them, that can be applied to it. So you'll see classes in, for example, if you're using a different library that gives you a class that you can do a number of methods on it. Maybe there's so many use cases, or maybe for example, when you create cases. So for example, we create a class. So a class is created using the keyword class and then the name of the class. You notice the capital letter in the first. So that's usually how Python allows us to define a class. Now you can create a class that does nothing, so that you just say class animal pass. So this is a class that does nothing. And then you can initiate or you can create an object of that class using something called an instantiation. Instantiation is simply saying, let's, for example, I create a variable A, then I do that. So what I've done is I've created an object A of class animal, right? But then this class has nothing, does nothing, has no properties. Now, an animal can have properties like the type, it can have the name, number of legs, all those sort of things. So for example, I can say type. No, type is a wrong variable. So for example, I can say the name. I say the name is a dog, right? So this is a variable called name that is associated to a dog. But then in programming, if you want to create an attribute of a class, you have to reference to it using the self.name, right? So self.name kind of becomes an attribute to a class, but then this brings problems because you have to kind of initialize it. So we initialize a class using a method, a function called init. Init is just say usually stands for initialization. So when you're creating this A, when you say A is equals to animal, when you're creating this instance of this class, you're usually calling this init method, right? So for example, I want to create an object A of animal, let's say cat, right? Now, I can pass this cat to you are passing this cat to the initialization class by this fact that we are doing A is equals to, this is initialization, so we are passing it to this function. Then you can pass here name, right? So we are passing that name, and then we are saying we want to say let the property of name be this name that has been passed. So the property of this object A, in this instance, it will be the cat. So then you say self.name is equals to cat. So we don't need to have this. So what have we done? Not cat, it has to be name, the name that we are passing here. So to make it easier, I'll say animal name. So now animal name is an attribute or a property of this class animal. And the value of that property is being passed when we are creating the object. So now we can say a dot, we can say print a dot animal name, because now the animal name is a property of that class. So when you run this, it will print the cat. Okay, let's do another example to make it clear. So for example, I'll create a class fruit. So my class fruit, when you first initialize it, it should it should create an empty list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define that in my init method. So remember, the self is used to reference the object that the object of that is the class. So I'll say the self dot fruit list is equals to that. So we know this two squared creates the two squared brackets creates an empty list, right? So then, so I can say my first, so I create an object, so I'll say that, then say print f dot fruit list. So when I save that and comment this out, so when I run that, you see we have an empty list. Now, what I can do is I can create an object, a new method, right? That adds a fruit to that list. So, for example, like I call it add fruit, right? So this add fruit will take it will take it will take a fruit, the name of a fruit. So, for example, we call it let's say fruit name. It will take then a fruit, right? Then append it to that list. So I'll say self the fruit list dot append, right? What am I appending? The fruit name, right? So now when I run this, nothing happens because I've not called or performed this function. So what I do is I say f dot add underscore fruit. So what fruit do we add? Let's add an apple, right? So save that. When you run it, you see now our list has an apple. So I can do that again. Fruit dot add fruit oranges and f dot add fruit pineapple. So when I run that, now my list has 3 items in it. Are we together? Okay. So Bella is asking for us to repeat. So classes are just a means of bundling data and functionality together. So when you say create a new class, is we are creating a new type of object. So that allows new instances of that type to be made. So then you have to know that each class each class instance usually can have attributes attached to it for maintaining its state. So for example, the attribute like name can be given to an class instance. Class instances can also have methods usually defined by its class, right? For modifying its state. So in Python, this is how you create a class. Class keyword, then the class name, the name of the class, right? Then you put a full column, right? So you create a class, you give it a class name, and then a class we said can have can have that you say the class is just a means of bundling data and functionality together. So the data is what we call the properties or the attributes of a class. And you need to remember that so this, for example, is a class that does nothing. So we need to remember that when I say X is equals to class name, this means is I'm creating an instance of this class, right? Because I can also say Y is equals to class name. This simply means I'm creating another instance of this class, right? And these two are not dependent of each other. Okay, so then we say we create. So example here we did what we did is we created class animal. We created a class animal, right? Now we say a class when you create. So when you create when you say C is equals to class name like this, is we are creating an instance of this class, and creating an instance of a class usually means we are calling this method, right? It means we are calling this method underscore init when you create an instance of a class, right? So then we said you can create an instance of a class that has, when you're creating that instance, you pass it some attributes or some values that you want that, the data that you want that instance to have. So we said we do this by creating this method, then passing this keyword self. Now this keyword self is usually used to kind of reference to reference to this class, right? So then you can say this class, what we want to do is we want to give this class some attributes. So for example, I want to say the type, right? So type is an attribute, right, of this class. So that's why you're using the self, right? When we say, then we say we need to pass here. So type is usually a wrong name to use because it's a keyword within Python. So let's say name, for example, name. Okay, so then I can say the type is the name. So now what I've done is I've created a class called class name, right? And when during the initialization or the creation, and by you have said by creation just means when you do this, So we're saying when this is done, right? When this is done, please run this method, right? And I've said when you're running this method, give it a value. So for example, I can give it a value, right? So now I'm creating an instance of that object, but then also I'm giving it, I'm giving the attribute type this value. So now type, the value of type is potatoes. So when I say print, when I say C dot, now when you say use the dot, you can use the dot to reference, to get an attribute of a class or to run a method. So I say C dot type, right? So when I run that, it should, that did not work. I guess it's because of this word type. Let's just use another name. I'll just call it name of prop, right? So I can get the name of prop. So I'm gonna run that. Okay, so what I can do is let me add print here so that it prints it out. So when I run that, it will print out potatoes. So it was not showing because of that, of the print, the lack of print. Now this is how you create a class that you initialize the class with the property name of prop that has the value potatoes. So now when you go back to this example here, we are creating a class called fruit. Now this class called fruit, when it's being created, an object of an instance of this class is being created. In this case, f is equals to, we have said, also create an empty list called fruit list, right? Then we have said this is the instance of that class can have a method called add fruit, which simply means what it simply does is it takes the fruit, the name of a fruit, then adds it to that empty list we created. So then we say to do this, we define our method here, def, then the name of the method, the self to reference that instance of that object. Then we pass it the fruit name, right? Then we say self.fruitName.append fruit name. So we are appending the fruit name that we are passing to the method. Now our list, when you print, when you get our list, it will first have, for example, the apple. Then when you call the method again, give it oranges. Now it will add that, then it will add that. So now when you print your list, it has those three items. So is that clearer, Viola? Awesome. So that's how you create classes and the instances. So for example, we can add a method here that let's say remove fruit, right? Then what fruits do you want to remove? Okay, so please someone suggest what we should add to this method. We want to remove a specific fruit. So what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to say f dot remove remove fruit, and then for example I want to pass oranges. So the remove method, how does that work, Margaret? Or anyone else can tell us how it works? How does the remove method work? Okay, so fruit list, to say fruit list dot remove, then in brackets, fruit name. Okay, so let's save that. Let's comment this other stuff. Okay, so let's save that, then let's run it. So we are getting an error, Margaret, and it says name error. Name fruit list is not defined. Okay, so you're saying we add the self.fruitlist, dot remove, and in brackets then fruit name. Okay, so let's try it again. So we are not, did you say print? So let's let's add f.print, print f.fruitlist, so that we see that it has actually been removed. Okay, so let's try it again. right? So Margaret is right, because you can see the oranges has been removed from that list. Awesome, thank you, Margaret. And then anyone else with a different way of doing it? Okay. Now, we have looked at classes, we have looked at methods within a class, we have looked at attributes. So the other thing is we need to know is that classes can be inherited. So you can create a new class, you can derive or create a new class out of another previous class. So for example, in this class of ours called animal, so I'll comment that, and I'll comment these other ones. So here we have a class called animal that simply has an attribute called animal name. So what I can do is, for example, let's say create a new class. So let's create a new class called cat. Now this class is inheriting, so we have to use the bracket. So it's inheriting the previous one, right? So we are creating a new class cat that is derived or inherited from this class animal. Now, when you say inherit means you're inheriting an attribute. Right? It's like humans. When you inherit from your parents, you inherit a name, right? You inherit some behavior, like something like that. So that's kind of the same with programming. So for example, I can create a new instance of this. Call it a cat, all right? But then I can still call up and give the cat a name. So let's say what do you call the cats? It's fine. Okay, so then I can say print the name. So when I run, so we don't need this, comment it. So when we run this, it will print us this the name Spike. So you notice that in our class cat, we have not had to recreate this initialization method because it's inheriting it from the animal class. Okay, so for example, in a parent class, I can create a new method called, let's say, make sound, right? So the make sound will take a sound. What sound does an animal make, right? And then, for example, print the sound, right? So for the case of a cat, what sound does a cat make? So cats that make sound like meows. I hope that's the sound the cat makes. Meows, right? So if I run this, it's going to print meows in the sense that that's the sound that the cat made. Now, in our child class or derived class, we can actually also create methods for it, right? So def what do you want the class to do? So let's say class method fight print something like that, right? So then I can say c dot fight So in this case, it just prints that. So zero that, run, then it pause. So that's how you define a child class, and the child class will inherit the attributes of the parent class and the methods that can be applied to that class. Okay. So anyone with a question? Then the other thing is a class can inherit from many multiple parent classes. So it doesn't have to be a single class. So I'm here silently waiting for questions. Any? Okay, so I'll ask a question. Where is that? I have these variables name. someone tell us how we can I can reverse this name. How can I reverse this name? I have a name that I want to reverse this name. How can I reverse this name? Using a function to reverse. Okay. So how do we do how do we use that function to reverse for reverse? Is that Jamila and Margaret? Are you saying the same thing? So how do I do list or reverse? You said list or reverse. So how do I do that? Like this. So when I run, it's telling me type error and bound method list or reverse needs an argument. Mm-hmm. How do I reverse? Is it name dot reverse? Okay, if I run that, it tells me attribute error. String object has no attribute reverse. Haven't tested. My thinking is that break down the name into a list of characters and then run the reverse. Okay, so can you share your screen? I think you can share your screen. So you can share your screen so that we see what you're writing. Using two different screens. Okay. Okay, so Margaret's saying I'm using two different screens, one for Zoom and one for Code. Okay, so she can share. Okay, anyone else willing to take, or she's doing, okay, let's see. Margaret, are you doing it in your machine? Then you can paste it, you'll paste it, then like write it, or how are you going to do it? I hope everyone is trying it out on their machines.